All right, guys, welcome back to another That Fuzzing Rock Show interview. And this one is definitely a bucket list one for sure. Please welcome to the show metal royalty, in my humble opinion, and a Grammy Award winning artist, Mr. David Ellefson. Welcome to the show, my friend.
How are you, Fuzz? What's going on?
Dude, I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. First of all, I want to thank you for taking your time to hang out with us today and talk a little bit about you and what you got going on. And especially and selfishly, I should say, your appearance at the 2025 Extreme Music Awards here in Albany, New York, January 7th, 2025. And we're going to get to all that and then some in just a second. But first, I want to take you all the way back to when you were just a wee David. What actually got you into being interested in being a musician?
Well, two parts of that. One, my parents bought a Wurlitzer organ, and I had to take organ lessons from the church organist. That was phase one, right? And then phase two is, all right, everyone's taking up some elective, right? In fifth grade or something. So I took up the tenor sax and the orchestra band, which only because it was the coolest looking instrument. That's the only reason I decided to pick it up, right? It was not my love. Didn't like orchestra music. None of that. But, it's what you do because your parents want you to not be a total slacker, So,
Absolutely.
But, the real love of music came probably about age 10. I started hearing rock and roll on the school bus radio. It was BTO, Bachman Turner Overdrive, Kiss, then eventually Foreigner, but certainly Styx and Sweet. I mean, my God, Ballroom Blitz and Fox on the Run, all this stuff was coming out. Around it, I guess, too, was probably ELO, Electric Light Orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, couched around these really great, heavier guitar bands that I just mentioned was also yacht rock. Right? Because, there was also England Dan and John Fortgoli, probably some Doobie Brothers, Hall and Oates, all that kind of stuff. So that's why I always love yacht rock, because I actually like that music. It was cool. The bass lines were cool. The guitars were cool. I always look at it like this. The 50s was kind of the invention of rock and roll, right? Let's just call it that, right? The 60s, this kind of far out experimental. Let's take it as far as we can go, from Hendrix to Santana to let's just call it Woodstock, for lack of a better description, right? Whatever happened there was. That was kind of the bookend of the 60s, right? Mm-hmm. And then I look at like the 70s was kind of refining it, right? The Fenders and Gibsons, as instruments got more refined. We got the flanger, the phaser, the talk box. These things were Frampton, of course, and Joe Walsh. The sort of experimenting in a more equipment was better. It was more refined. Yep. Right, the Ampeg amps for me, the Rickenbacker, Rickenbacker, not really Gibson, except that Kiss used Gibson, Gene used Gibson basses, but the Rickenbacker, the Fender P-Bass, and of course I would watch the Midnight Special at night. So I lived out on a farm, right? So fortunately we didn't have cable, but we had UHF and VHF, like we were styling, right? So I could see, these, kind of get those programs. I get Don Kirshner's rock concert. On the radio, I'd hear the King Biscuit Flower Hour. So I'd hear like live Rick Derringer, cool stuff, right? And, then that paved the way into kind of the late 70s, early 80s, which became, Cheap Trick, AC/DC, eventually Judas Priest, kind of into that. And then, of course, that was for sure musically my inspiration, because by that time I was, mid-teens and I had my own bands and we were, we all wanted to be rock stars and, so I picked up the bass by about age 11, kind of self-taught initially, because through the saxophone and the organ lessons, I could read music. I could read treble and bass clef, and I knew the language of music. So I could sort of speak it to myself enough to teach myself. And then, then it was the pursuit of just going to play with everybody I could. And, at age 12, for me, I was getting called in to play in jazz band. This one guy had the jazz band gig, and he also played in this other band. called the River City Band, and these guys were all like 16. They had like cool guitars, these here, like these, the electro harmonics, big muff,
Yeah.
which is a distortion pedal, right? And I was like,
yeah,
button, and all of a sudden you sound like Ted Nugent and Leonard Skinner, and it's like, oh, that's how they make that sound.
hell yeah, man. Yeah,
so, and they had big amps, and so, and I could play because I practiced and I put the time in, so I got the call for these gigs, and so I was always the youngest guy in my bands, even in Megadeth, I was the youngest guy when we started the band, so I guess the name Junior was appropriate at that time, but now I'm the oldest guy in all my bands. Now I'm the seasoned veteran. I'm like, all right, come on, youngsters, follow Uncle Dave here, So it's funny how the times have changed.
Right. So you covered a lot of your influences already. That was another one of my questions. But is there anybody out now, newer stuff that may have your ear?
I pay attention to some emails that come through with, industry emails with some kind of new stuff that's coming out. The last time I was on Shiprock, which is a couple years ago now, I remember when Bad Omens were coming out. I thought it was super cool. And I see they're doing well. I mean, that's one that comes to mind. They had kind of a cool show, of course. There's a lot of bands that opened for Megadeth, in years past, Parkway Drive, who are now big.
Yes.
I obviously pay attention to it because I'm always, I was one of the young guys with thrash metal playing tomorrow's music when we were out on tour with Ronnie Dio and Iron Maiden and this, Judas Priest. Even we were kind of tomorrow's music, right? And new music is always led. The trends are always led by the new younger artists, right? It just is, right? Because young people, that's they're looking for a reason, they're looking for a voice, they're looking for a soundtrack to their life, and so it's always driven by that. I get my Billboard magazine, my Grammy edition, and there's a lot of artists in there I don't know, and of course it's genres I don't listen to, a lot of pop and urban music and stuff, and even country. I'm not a guy who jumped on the country bandwagon. I know there's a ton of money to be made there, but my whole purpose of playing rock was I rocked out against country because my parents listened to country and western, and then that was the thing.
Right.
And I remember we had a neighbor, and we were at the Armory in Jackson, and there was like a dance going on, and country bands playing, and this guy comes over to me and he goes, you can be down there making $50 a night playing bass. And I said, you know what, screw that, I'll play rock and roll for free. I ain't playing country. So that was just kind of my, to me, music is about what's in your heart. It's your voice. It's you kind of sing your song through your instrument as a musician, so for me, I've been lucky that I was able to follow that and play rock and roll my whole life. And look, I'm dipping back into some stuff from the 70s and the 80s and some stuff that I was growing up with. I'm recording some music with some guys and putting some stuff out just because it's fun. It kind of takes me back in time to various points in time. So it's a lot of, and it's fun with my buddies. We all kind of share that same collection of music, whether it was April Wine to Van Halen, the stuff, again, Cheap Trick, AC/DC, the stuff we all grew up on together.
So you co-founded Megadeth in '83. Since then, you've been in quite a few projects, including bands like F5, Delucid, Hail, which is a great cover band, by the way, and with some of the greatest players as well. Let's talk about the Kings of Thrash. I believe you guys just wrapped that up, if I'm not mistaken.
We did, yeah. We ended up doing a whole world tour this year. We did the U.S. We went to Australia again 2 years in a row. We just did a whole UK, Ireland, Northern Ireland, and European tour. Yeah, we worked hard this year. It was really cool, and that was kind of just a play to me and Jeff Young, who's in the band with me, to our legacy. And I guess it's kind of like when Roger Waters and Pink Floyd split, they both went out and played the songs, you know what I mean? So I get twice as many people playing the songs, Right. So, it was fun for a season of my life, and we did a lot. We went to a lot of fun places, and of course, we'll continue to do more. But it's nice to just kind of have a little season of rest right now as I'm, rolling into the new year. Of course, I'm coming up to see you guys in Albany. I've got Metal Allegiance. We're playing at the House of Blues during NAMM a couple weeks later, which is kind of our annual metal summit that we do. And I've got the Bass Warrior Tour coming up in March, which is me with my Italian band. We go out and do, and that's a way that I can play some of my solo stuff, some Ellefson solo stuff. Obviously dip into a little bit of the Megadeth catalog, play a different flavor of some of that stuff. So, I get to do, get to do a lot of really cool stuff. I mean, look, I was at Megadeth exclusively from really 83 till the group ended in 2002. I mean, it's really all I did outside of a co-write with Flotsam and Jetsam. That's about all I did was one thing. And that's a season of a career when you really need to be united and focused. And then once the band broke up, then I was like, all right, well, now what am I going to do? And then F5 and Temple of Brutality and some of these other things came along. And then Hale, like you said, Hale, we were kind of the first guys, like the famous guys out playing cover songs. We were really kind of, I think, the first ones doing that. And, and then I went back to Megadeth after that in 2010 for another, 11 years or so. And, now it's kind of like, I get to kind of just do what I want, you know what I mean? And not do what I don't want, you know what I mean? If there's some things that it's, I don't have to sort of do the grind anymore, which is nice. And I like to just, my adage of just play music you like with people you like.
So, and this is just out of curiosity, and one of the most iconic bass intros is one of yours for, Peace Sells.
Right.
Now, did that come to you like were you screwing around? Did it just come to you?
The truth of it is, it started as a guitar riff. Dave was, writing a riff, and then we had a bass, and then me and Dave were essentially homeless, right? This is after the Killing Is My Business album tour. So we're living with our the guy that engineered and co-produced Killing Is My Business. His name was Carrot Fay, and so we're living basically squatting at his house up in Laurel Canyon. And I had this bass. It was a BC Rich bass. I ripped the frets out of it, and so it was fretless and stained like a natural color. And Dave picked it up, was playing. He goes, "Hey, Junior, come here, play this riff." So we're working this riff out, and we went to rehearsal, and he said, "Here, play that riff." So he started playing it, and Gar jumps in, and then Dave and Chris started playing the riff, the verse, right, the chunks, right. And that was a song that really wrote itself in the band room, like within a couple hours. And it's funny, the songs that did that: Symphony of Destruction, 99 Ways to Die, Sweating Bullets. I guess Angry Again was kind of put together in an afternoon in the studio here in Phoenix. So it's funny that a lot of the biggest Megadeth songs that became hits, like the singles and the hits, were the ones that sort of fell out right in front of us in the band room, and of course time went into kind of detailing them up a little more, but the basic core of the song was there, so that's kind of the history of that one and how that came together. And it's funny because we did a tour in, so this is probably late 1985, right? We were just writing tunes. We had our deal with Combat Records at the time, and so then in early 1986, we went out and we did like a 1-month tour in your area, kind of around the East Coast, and we were going to Boston, playing the Rathskeller, big clubs,
yeah,
and Dr. Metal, who sadly is no longer with us, but a bunch of these guys, were all supporters, for us, and we played every song we had. Like we played the entire Killing Is My Business record. We played what would become the Peace Sells album. And it was really, that tour was like our pre-production for the Peace Sells album. And of course, pre-iPhones and YouTube, you could plug and play stuff and people wouldn't bootleg it, but we could tell every night, man, when we started that song, Gar would start with the kick drum, then I'd start with the bass, and you could just read the body language in the room that everybody was just grooving on that, right? And
Absolutely.
we
Absolutely.
knew, we go, you know what? I think we got a hit here, and that was a cool feeling because everything else, The Conjuring, Devil's Island, all this stuff is pretty thrashing and pretty menacing, and so to change the tempo, sort of change the mood, change kind of the conviction of that lyric. What do you mean, right? It's
Yep.
if you think about songs, that opening line, what do you mean? Hello me, meet the real me. So I'm
Yep.
lucky that I was in a band that had those opening lines that really, you take a mortal man. It's like when the opening line, it's like, okay, you got my attention. What's the
It
rest of
grabs you.
the story? Yeah,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Yep.
and when we were writing songs, and I've taken that now with me, in everything that I do, and as people write lyrics and bring things to me too, I'll just ask them real simply. I go, so what's it about? You know, I remember I was always thinking love to death, right? Boy meets girl, boy kills girl. So right, so that so no one can have girl, right? So
Right. Right. Right.
and they're funny, right? A lot of them, but they're just kind of, what's the song about, And Megadeth, a lot of the stuff was kind of tongue in cheek like that, But
Mhm.
it's you kind of need to be able to say in a sentence or two what the song is about, because as we were fast forward, we were in the studio on Cryptic Writings, and we wrote the music for Trust. We really spent the time. We took from a demo of Countdown to Extinction. We had this song called Absolution, which is now, I
Mhm.
think, on one of the box sets or something. And it was just an instrumental piece that Dave and Marty had, and me and Nick played a little bit on it, but it was mostly this kind of guitar, really pretty guitar piece. And we plucked that and stuck that in the middle of Trust, and that's that whole breakdown piece. That
Oh,
whole
okay. All right.
that,
Yeah.
that is a song called Absolution, right? So we basically took it. It sat on the sidelines for 4 years, 5 years, and we put it
Yep.
in the middle. So we composed this tune, and then I remember, Dave wrote a lyric called "Smoking Gun," and our manager Bud Pricker came in. We were all excited to play the song for him, and we played the song for him, and Bud's sitting there on the couch. The song ends, and I'm like, "What do you think?" And he sits there. He goes, "What's a smoking gun?" Right? Now he's quite a bit older than us, right?
Sure.
And Dave starts to explain it, and he goes, "Stop. The fact that you have to explain it to me means you have to explain it to all your listeners, because they probably don't know what a smoking gun is either. So write something simpler, And Dan Huff who produced that record with Dave, that and Risk. He was really good about, because he'd been in Nashville now for a few years as a guitar player and started producing, and he was really good about just, he'd be like, "Man, just write your life, man, just write your life," because think about country. As much as I make fun of country music, as a kid, as a composer, as a lyric writer myself, I listen to country, and I have nothing but the greatest admiration and respect for it, because they tell big stories with very few words. And I remember when I moved here, I guess moved here to Phoenix, there's a couple of stations here. There's one here, I think it was KNIX, was owned by Buck Owens, who I used to watch every
Hmm.
Saturday night as a kid on the show Hee Haw, right?
Hee-haw. Yep.
And,
Absolutely.
and Phoenix is a huge country music town, a mecca here,
Mhm.
right, with country
Yep.
radio. And so I'd start listening to the new country, which was, the Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson, this kind of stuff. And I'd
Sure.
listen to the lyrics. I go, man, these are brilliant songs, right? The lyrics, So I often defer to that lots of times, about just the cleverness of using so few words to tell such a complete story and paint a really complete picture.
Mhm. So now, looking forward to 2025, you're a busy man. You have a lot of irons in the fire.
Mhm.
Let's talk first about you have new stuff coming out from the Ellefson Soto project, correct?
Right.
Can
Which
you tell
more of
us a
that
little bit?
will be revealed. I mean, it's funny. Jeff mentioned something about it, and I think it kind of, people were like, "Oh yeah, that's cool." And I guess I mentioned, "Yeah, we're going to be working," but yeah, that more to be revealed on that here in in the coming weeks.
Okay, so everybody stay tuned for that. It's
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
up. So.
But until then, it's a secret. Don't tell anybody.
Yep, sure. Well, nobody watches this show
Yeah,
anyways, so you don't have to worry about it.
right.
So in March of 2025, you have the Bass Warrior tour
Right.
going back over to Europe again. Tell us a little more about that project.
So that, it's funny. My guitar player Andy Martingelli, he puts the band together for me.
Mhm.
He is, as I call him, my musical director. Really, he rehearses the band, he puts it together. He and I discuss the song list. Of course, he's played on Sleeping Giants and No Cover, and these Ellefson solo records, and also on the Ellefson solo records. So he's done a lot of this stuff with me. So. He knows the repertoire and he's a fantastic player. And so he hit me one day. He said, "Look, I got an agent that, is booking Vinnie Moore and, John Lord and Carl Palmer and a bunch of these guys that, want to go out and play." And actually I couldn't fit it in for a couple of years. So finally, earlier this year in March, I went over and I did one with him. And it's a really, they're really cool rooms we play, everything from small little places, kind of like I would say like the Baked Potato in LA, which is like a notorious jazz club. And even here in Phoenix, we have the Rhythm Room, right? Which is, if you're in the jazz circuit or the Alex Skolnick trio or stuff like that, you would play these kind of rooms, right? So they're very cool. They have a very built-in kind of audience that goes to them. And of course, it's great when the metalheads go. A few years ago, I had a thing called Bass Story, which was sort of a storyteller clinic / performance. So it kind of spun out of that, and now it's turned into really more of our band performing. A little less talking, and because the territories we go, a lot of Eastern Europe into Germany, Italy, they don't understand me anyway, right? They don't speak much English in a lot of places, so I find it's better to shut up and just play the songs.
But they'll sing a lot of the words back to you.
Totally. Oh my God. I mean, they know the words. It's funny. I've asked people around the world over the years, right? People in South America, in Argentina, even in Japan, like they don't speak a lick of English. Like especially when we first went to Japan, right? Yet they knew every word, And so I started asking people over the years, and they said, "Yeah, we learned how to speak English from Megadeth and Guns N' Roses records." Because they were big fans, and
sure,
they said we would either learn from like London English, which has a certain vernacular to it, or we would learn from like California English, which is more how you and I talk. Hey man, yo, what's up, buddy? Hey, that kind of slangy stuff, right?
Correct. Yep.
So isn't that funny that through our lyrics is. Well, it's like reading a book. Who wants to read a book you don't like, right? But when you get a book you like, right? Which is why I read memoirs. Like I'm savoring the Geddy Lee memoir right now. I'm now savoring the Alex Van Halen book. I read a lot like Eruption and some of these other ones with Eddie. Because Eddie never did write a memoir. So
right.
Even the Sammy Hagar memoir is great. I'm a Sammy fan. His solo stuff. So even when he would talk about Van Halen, it got my attention, being a big Van Halen fan. So
absolutely,
I'm kind of the same way with books. I read, I like books that have pictures in them.
They're very helpful. Your pictures are very helpful.
Yeah.
You mentioned it before, but let's talk about NAMM 2025.
Yeah.
You got something a little special going on there. Your coffee company. For those of you who don't know, you have a coffee company. You guys are doing a rock and roll VIP lounge. I want to talk about the coffee company for a second, but I just want to read some of the names of your coffees because these are cool. Medium roast, roast in peace.
Right.
Rock and Rose is the light roast.
Yeah.
Kings of Thrash is a dark roast, and Napalm in the Morning, another dark roast. Killer names, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. And we even have one that we did for me and Frank Bello for Altitudes and Attitude. In fact, we might bring some to NAMM as well. And that's a great espresso roast, which is of course dark, but espresso is a little bit of a different beast, and obviously something you want to grind and drink very fine, so you can really sort of pull out all of the nuances of the coffee, of the flavor.
So how did you get involved in having a coffee company?
Well, look, I don't drink booze and I don't do any of that stuff anymore. So, for me, coffee was kind of that's the deal, right? And so I was introduced to the guitar player of Between the Buried and Me, and we started essentially. He was a roaster, right? He and his wife have a roasting company in North Carolina. So he was my first roaster, and then from there we branded, Ellefson Coffee. We did, the Roast in Peace. We wanted fun rock and roll stuff. So that's how we rolled it out, and we even had a brick and mortar store in my little hometown of Jackson, Minnesota, for a few years, and so most of it we sell online now, and of course we always bring it to wherever we are, the sort of David Ellefson pop-up merch stores, wherever, wherever we go, right? It's how life works now, right? We're all like a traveling road show, like the traveling circus,
I got all the merch for this is in the back of my Jeep.
So right? Yeah.
No,
yeah,
100%.
with the Fuzz merch pop-up store, right?
Exactly, 100%.
So yeah, look, we've been members of NAMM. So we go out there and we exhibit every year, and we have our rocker buddies come and hang out, and look, the coffee's kind of a merchandising thing as much as anything, but it's great. Look, it smells good. People from all over the NAMM floor come over to our booth because it smells super good, drinking coffee, and we have a good time. We do autograph sessions with my friends and let people kind of promote what they're doing. If they're selling things or promoting new bands, new records, new books. Last year I had my chiropractor friend, Randy Kurtz, who was actually my bass tech for me as we were writing some of the Rust in Peace record and everything. And then he wised up and went to chiropractic school so he could make a real living. But he's my, my bass player buddy. And so I had him come out, and he did a really cool presentation about chiropractic. And the funny thing was, his first thing that he said, a bunch of people come around, he goes, okay, we're all tense. We're all, everybody's nervously running around, hustling around the NAMM floor. He goes, here's the first thing. Raise your shoulders, right? So here, let's do this together, folks. Raise our shoulders, right? Like this, right? There you go. Ready? I'll take a deep breath in, blow it out, and drop your shoulders. And it was so funny how everybody in this little group, about 30, 40 people, just went, oh my God, I feel so much better. And he goes, I want you to do that once an hour now as you continue here on NAMM.
It's not bad. It actually did work.
It's like priceless, right? And so I like to do it all the time. Pam, my manager should go, hey, stop. Raise your shoulders, take a breath. And I'll be like, I don't want to do that. I'm busy. She goes, stop, take a breath, raise your shoulders. Like, okay. All right, now we can talk because you're relaxed. All right, let's
there you go.
So it's good for creativity. It's good for business. So that's the kind of cool stuff that happens in our NAMM booth, stuff like that.
See that? Now we just become a science show. Perfect. Exactly. I love it. Absolutely. Why not? So you also wrote a couple books. You have a publishing company. For those of you that don't know, My Life with Death in 2013, and More Life with Death in 2019. Tell us a little bit about those.
So my friend Joe MacGyver came to me. He's in London, and he became the editor of Bass Player magazine. But he was writing for a handful of publications. And when I went back to Megadeth in 2010, Dave was putting his book out, his memoir. So Joel contacted me and said, hey man, congratulations, back in Megadeth. It's cool. He goes, now's the time to write your book, because you and Dave are the bookends of the story, right? So he is the one who really encouraged me to do it, and really walked me through the process of kind of the points you need to hit, to sort of tell a life story at that point. So that was that one. 5-6 years later, I guess, is when I did More Life with Death. By that time, Megadeth had won a Grammy. We had the coffee company. There's, I had my record label, Combat Records, which I had secured, as well. So there was quite a bit more to the story pretty quickly. So that was, that. The first book that I wrote was actually one called Making Music Your Business, a guide for young musicians. And at the time, that was in the I wrote it during the euthanasia tour cycle. I wrote it when I was on the road. And at the time, I was writing for Bass Player magazine. I was writing a column, and so the editor, Jim Roberts, was a super cool guy. And I said, "Hey, I have this manuscript." And he said, "Send it over." And so he ended up being the editor of my book, and also published it through the publisher for Guitar Player and Bass Player magazine, which was called Backbeat Books. And I think now it's been taken over through Hal Leonard. And I even did an audio book for it. Hal Leonard came to me maybe 10 years ago and said, "Hey, we are offering the opportunity to do an audiobook. Basically, you record it, send it to us, and then we'll put it up as an audiobook." But the funny thing was, Fuzz, is, this book, I wrote it in 94, 95. And there was a lot of formulas, mathematical formulas in there about how to calculate things for like cassettes and things like that, which are pretty outdated, right? So like you, I'm behind the mic in the vocal booth reading my book. I'm going, oh my gosh. So I literally did rewrites on the spot of like, talking about videos. No one gets money from a label to make a video really anymore. Now everything's
Right.
YouTube. And so it gave me a chance to kind of do an updated. The audiobook is kind of like making music your business 2.0. It's sort of the volume 2 version. So if anybody checks that out online, it gave me a chance to bring it more up to speed to the modern day business that we live in.
Now let's talk about Ellefson Films, because this kind of got me excited when I saw this. Tell us a little bit about that. But you have a pretty big project that's coming up sometime soon. About Nick Menza.
Yeah.
And this was my life. Nick Menza's. I'm trying to get this right. I don't want to misread it.
I know they kind of changed the title after we Bayview Entertainment picked it up to put it out, which is great. So they wanted to do 2 screenings of it. So the first one's going to be in LA on Thursday, February 13th in LA. The tickets, you can buy tickets to come and see it. We're going to do a red carpet. It'll be a cool event. And at this point, I really wanted to get it done for Nick's mom and dad, Don and Rose Menza, because they obviously have been through a lot, losing their son, of course. But this is a really cool story of his life. Of course, there's the Megadeth story in it, but it's his life, and I really felt like what a great present to give to Don and Rose after all of that, and of course, Nick being in Megadeth for a decade. And it's funny because the Randy Kurtz, so the chiropractor, right? When he was checking for me, right? We were rehearsing the Rust in Peace tour, and right across the hall was Toto. Then they were getting ready to. So this was in like 1990, right? We're getting ready to go to Europe. Toto's across the hall. They're rehearsing, who were phenomenal, right? And Steve Lukather comes into our room and he's like, "Dude, let's jam. It's like, well, we don't really jam. We play Holy Wars, right? We're not
right.
Man, right? And Steve, I've been friends with him ever since, and he's just the funniest guy. And but so Don Menza, Nick's dad, I mean, this guy is the gold standard of woodwind. I mean, he played with Charlie. He did the Pink Panther theme. That's him, for
really?
That's Nick's dad. He was first chair for Buddy Rich, first chair for Louis Bellson. I mean, this guy measures up. Right? So he did a ton of sessions with the Toto guys, because before they formed Toto, they were the session guys around town playing on all the records, right?
Sure.
A lot of the yacht rock stuff we just talked about, they were the guys playing on those records. So then they formed Toto, and so we are. Fast forward 1990, we're rehearsing. Jeff Porcaro, who's now since passed, but I mean, he is the guy. I mean, he's Boz Scaggs, Steely Dan. I mean, he is the drummer on all those records, right? And has the Porcaro shuffle, the Rosanna.
Oh yeah.
That shuffle, that's the Porcaro shuffle, right?
Yeah.
Africa and all this stuff, right? So he needed a snare drum, right? A snare drum broke, or he needed a snare drum real quick. And so Randy goes, "Well, I could probably borrow one in Nick's, we're with Megadeth right across the hall." And, he didn't really care too much about that until he says, he goes, Nick is Don Menza's son. And they went, whoa, 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 Don Menza, right? So all of a sudden it was like, you're borrowing Don Menza's snare drum, basically it was like a
Right,
level, right? So instant respect. Suddenly, like, Megadeth, Toto, it's like, it was, and I got to tell you, man, that was probably one of the most lasting memories out of many, of course, but to go in and sit in the room while Toto was rehearsing, and I think they played Africa, and I mean, shivers. I mean, they were so good. I mean, it sounded just like the record, right? And you're in the room with these guys. These guys are legends. I mean, true legends, man. And then I remember going into into this other area of where they had the whole front house console, and the guy had some Yamaha NS10s, which are like our reference studio monitors, and listening to it. And dude, I'm telling you, Fuzz, it was like listening to a Toto record. I mean, spot on. It was unbelievable how the quality of what they were playing. And I mean, what a treat to sit and hear that. I mean, up close, of course, now there's all these movies and Yacht Rock and all these, these legendary movies, Hired Gun, all these things that are out there that, tell the story with these guys in it. So that was cool to sit literally in the room, front row, and watch those guys just do their craft so effortlessly.
That's a pretty amazing memory for sure, man. So you had a stretch filling in with Overkill. How did that come about? How did you grab that gig?
Well, I think my good friend Jason Bittner was like one of my cheerleaders for that one. So our good friend, look, we've grown up with Overkill, right? I mean, we had Overkill out on tour with us on the P-Cells tour. It was Megadeth, Overkill, Necros, 1987. Sure. We're just dudes from the hood, right? We all grew up together in the thrash community. So, bass player Dee Verney had a shoulder surgery, and he wasn't able to go on the road. And they said they had this the Scorch record out. So offers were coming to tour, and so they had a South American run in April this year. And so my name, I guess, got in the hat, and Bittner for sure was the big cheerleader, as were, I guess, a lot of people, just saying, look, just call Ellefson, man. And that, look, that, and it's funny learning it, it was complex. There was a lot of stuff in there, but of course that's kind of what I do. I know that genre. I know, I know that stuff. So it was super fun to learn Dee Dee's parts. And of course, Dee Dee writes, as I understand, writes all the music. Blitz writes all the lyrics. So it was really cool to study not only his bass playing, but study how he works as a composer. And Dee Dee's just the coolest. He's a super cool guy. And so I learned the material, and we went down to South America and did, I think, 9 shows down there across South America, a lot of festivals and stuff like that. So it was super cool, and as well, we were on that tour when I was in Costa Rica. That's when Bittner hit me about heading up your way here in January for the show in Albany. So, like I always tell people, just be in the room. Just get in the room and more stuff happens,
That's it. That's right. So, I mean, perfect segue. Let's talk about your upcoming appearance, this year's 2025 Extreme Music Awards, January 11th at Empire Live in Albany, New York, for those of you wondering. Not only will you be presenting the Best Bass Player award, but you'll also be participating in, speaking of Bittner, his insane all-star jam that we're keeping it under wraps as much as we can. I mean,
cool.
It's going to be absolutely crazy. That's going to be at the end of the night, of course. And to say the least, some people are very excited that your name is being mentioned as showing up. A lot of people are looking forward to seeing you here. So you said that Bittner dropped it in your ear about that, and
he did. Yeah, he asked me. I'll never forget. Right when we were in Costa Rica, he goes, "Hey, I got a thing. You want to come up and do this thing at all?" I said, "What is it?" And we looked at it in the calendar. I'm like, "Sure, why not?" And then of course that's because you're in sunny, warm Costa Rica. I forget it's January in Albany at that time, right? As we all have our shorts on and t-shirts in Costa Rica. And of course, I live in Arizona, so it's pretty nice here. But Albany, ironically, when when we played the Rock and Derby, I think it was there in
Mhm.
Albany back in 2016, the youth, the Dystopia record.
Yeah.
That is the night before we played there is the night Nick Menza died. And I was in
Oh,
my
wow.
hotel room. We were all in our rooms, 2 in the morning or so. Dave calls me and he's all tore up, freaking out. He goes, Junior, fucking Nick's dead. I said, what? He goes, Nick died. Nick's died. And he was a mess. He was tore up. He was really, really upset about it. And he said Justice had just called him and told him about it. And I made a call to a couple people and got some more details about it. And, we had a band breakfast the next day. And, Dave wanted to try to do some kind of a charity or something. And,
Sure.
it kind of got blocked a little bit by management at the time because, look, we were just heading into a cycle. I mean, how full worldwide cycle for Dystopia. So it was kind of impossible to schedule that. But, I'll speak to Dave's heart on that, man. He really was. He was tore up about it. Nick would fight a lot, but those two were like brothers, man. They would fight, they'd hug, they'd yell, they'd go eat sushi. You know what I mean? It was like
Yeah.
me, it's funny because me and Marty were kind of like Marty said it best. We were like Marty, he said, he goes, there's two types of people. There's Kiss and Black Sabbath people, and then there's Led Zeppelin and Aerosmith people. And me and Marty were the Kiss and Black Sabbath guys. Dave and Nick were the Led Zeppelin Aerosmith guys, right?
That's
And
so true too.
isn't
Yeah.
that
So
funny?
true.
So so that's a profound memory that I have there. Now, of course, I've been to Albany many times. I also did a
Mhm.
cool autograph show there, kind of like a horror convention there, which was really cool. So it'll be great to come back, and I'm super looking forward to it. And yeah, I know some of the people who are going to be there, so I'm looking forward to jamming and throwing it down. So thank you for having me up there. I appreciate it.
Listen, it's our pleasure, believe me. Now one of the best things about that night, and obviously we did it last year, it was a huge success. Not only does the whole community just comes together and everybody supports each other, and it's absolutely an amazing vibe in a room. But the added bonus to that is that the artists locally here get to be presented their awards by guys that have shaped their musical aspirations. Probably, it's
Mhm.
probably one of my favorite vibes of the night is just to see like, you get like the hardcore award from Vinny Stigma last year. It was awesome. It was really
Sure.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think that's what a lot of guys look forward to. It's just the camaraderie of kind of just like, sitting there talking to their heroes, getting
Yeah,
to talk to their heroes one on one in a very relaxed situation. It's a really cool event, and we're blessed that you're going to be a part of it, man. I definitely appreciate that for
I
sure.
appreciate that, Buzz. Thank you, man.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, listen, I don't know if we've gotten to everything, but I think we covered quite a bit. I don't want to take
Good.
way too much of your time,
Yeah,
but I do have one thing that I normally do with my interviews is I do a rapid fire five. All right. I'll
okay,
give you 5 questions, answer them as quick as you can.
okay.
And if you don't want to answer one, then just you can pass it. It's, no harm, no foul.
No problem.
So, first question. What was the name of your first ever band?
Headstone
First gig you ever played?
on the guitar player's porch in Jackson, Minnesota.
One album you cannot live without?
Kiss Destroyer.
Your biggest rock and roll moment?
Probably winning a Grammy.
This one's always the toughest one. Your worst on stage oops?
Falling down, tripping over backwards. We played some strip club in like outside of like Toronto, Canada, on some tour somewhere, and I wasn't even drunk. I think it was on the Rust in Peace tour, right? It was like a fill day, and the stage had a step up, and I didn't know it was there, and I went back and I tripped and I fell down in a stone cold sober moment.
That's it, man. You got all 5 of them. Nice and quick too, for sure. Now,
Good.
is there anything else that you want to talk about before we wrap this up?
I think you covered it, man. That was a good A through Z right there.
I
That's it as of what's the date today? Like I don't know, the 18th or something.
18th, yeah, December
Yeah,
18th.
as of the 18th, that's it right there.
All right. So listen, man, I look forward to seeing you in January
Cool, man.
at the Extreme Music Awards, and you guys can look for David Ellefson in 2025 with his many projects that we discussed. And selfishly, again, looking forward to seeing you at Extreme Music Awards, January 11th at Empire Live in Albany, New York. For more information on David Ellefson, you can check out davidellefson.com. Facebook is at David Ellefson. Instagram is David_Ellefson. That's at, of course. EllefsonEmporium.com, KingsOfThrash.com, and DiethBand.com. I think I got them all.
Sounds good. You
All
know
right,
more
man,
than I do.
Listen, and again, I have to admit your background is better than mine. I'll openly admit that. I usually get, the comments like, "Oh, mine's better than yours," but
yours is pretty rad, dude. I'm looking at I like the white flying V with the black. What is that one?
It's actually a copy of a Gibson that one of my friends that passed away.
Mm-hmm.
He that's exactly his. I had the stickers made identically the way he had them on his guitar.
Nice.
The one white knob that he had, because all his guitars are Frankensteins, but he played V's, and that's kind of a tribute to him. And
that's awesome.
So I put that up there. But
this right away, I love it. It's killer.
Yeah, this white one here is from last year's awards. Everybody signed it, all the presenters. There'll be another one again for this year. And the only thing the wall's really missing is a Dave Ellefson Jackson.
I know a guy. He might be able to hook you up.
Oh, that would be really sweet. But listen, no pressure, man.
As long as you hang it dead center, I'm good. Then that way,
I'll put it actually right there.
There you go. Perfect.
Right next to the fuzz head for sure. But listen, man, I appreciate you taking the time, David, to hang out with us. And look forward to seeing you in Albany and all your other projects, man.
Perfect, man. Thanks, Buzz. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Happy holidays, everybody. Yep.
Same to you, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, David Ellefson. Thanks, buddy.